Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Main. I'm an employee here at PACT and also a local actress and filmmaker. We are launching a series of film discussions with local filmmakers. And today I have with me Alexander Gutterman, who is working on his, going into production in the fall on his second feature, having finished his first feature here in Duluth. So, Alexander, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Your first feature, let's really quickly talk
Sure.
about the one you completed that's already in the can, called In Winter. Tell us a little bit about that film.
Oh, sure. In Winter is a kind of a bleak, poetic meditation on solitude and suffering that we shot up here and in Cloquet and also across in Superior over a multi-year period, and it's done pretty well for a first feature. It's been kind of an adventure.
Yeah, I watched In Winter, and I really liked the stylized kind of nature of it, and it's a very kind of slower European style film. And that film, you did complete it. You got some distribution on that film, which is really a major achievement for a filmmaker.
Yeah, our outcomes were we were pretty ambitious, and we went to Cannes first. We applied. We didn't go to Cannes. We applied to Cannes first. We didn't get into Cannes, but we ended up being in eight small festivals. We world theatrical premiered at a new festival in New York City, and then we were purchased by Dreamscape Media. So we have a distribution in a variety of continents and places and modes and DVDs and streaming and all that.
That's great. That's really an achievement.
Yeah, it was. And having, we also got some really interesting criticism. It's a pretty strong film, so the critiques were, some people loathe it, and we also were called Masterpiece by a New York blogger. So there's a whole range, but it's been really amazing.
Yeah. I did read some of the online reviews, and it was interesting. There was kind of that.
It's not like, hey, this was a fun Disney romp, and I'm going to forget it in 2 weeks. It was, this is an incredible, beautiful piece of art, or God, this is ridiculously boring. I turned it off, and that's basically how people react to it.
Yeah. Well, and that's that kind of says something right there.
It has a personality.
It definitely makes a strong statement.
Yeah.
But let's talk now. Let's move ahead now. Your
Sure.
next project, your next feature coming up is called The Hunter.
Correct.
And you're looking to shoot that in the fall.
Our shooting schedule now calls for October of 2019, and you know how these things are. There are so many variables, but I am reasonably optimistic, or even more. I'm optimistic that we will be shooting in October of 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why don't you give us a little bit of an idea what The Hunter deals with in terms of themes?
Sure. In brief, In Winter struggled with the issue of suffering, and if you really wanted to pick one word for The Hunter, it would be meaning or significance. It draws its inspiration from some Old Testament texts about the futility of searching for meaning and significance in pleasure or in wisdom, the Ecclesiastes book. But if you want to distill all of that down, it would be the question of meaning or significance.
So you're kind of dealing with some bigger life themes here.
For now and for the foreseeable future, I'm dealing with probably what you call the fundamental themes of our existence.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what angle does The Hunter take on that, your upcoming film?
The Hunter takes a more surreal, absurdist, and tragicomic approach rather than purely, if you will, tragic. The Hunter takes an approach of trying to present this dilemma or this exploration in a way that's very engaging, and to leave the audience with an experience of walking through the dimensions of reality while traveling along that dilemma.
Wow.
Yeah.
So not Disney for sure.
Disney hasn't called me yet, and they're unlikely ever to call me.
Okay.
And I'm not going to call them either.
Well, okay.
Except possibly with a law. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. Right. It's just not. We're doing different things. I tell people there's an entertainment industry. They do certain things. It's an entertainment industry.
Right.
And I'm an artist, and it's just whatever. I'm not doing that.
Okay.
It's okay. It's good.
So.
And I'm poor, and they're rich. Sort of.
That's the way of the artist.
Yeah, somewhat, sometimes.
So let's talk for a little bit about the process, your process.
Sure.
I had written for our website a little piece about how these ideas come to you and how they're developed, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that again.
Sure. Well, when In Winter went into deep pre-pro. In other words, when the colorist was working on it, when the sound designer, my role as a director eased back to being like a supervisor and final decider on these things these professionals were doing. That was back in 17 in midwinter, I think, and I flew out to Sun Valley, and my friends out there, I did some skiing, and they gave me a cabin, a la Hemingway, to write, and I wrote The Hunter while I was out there. I had been thinking about it, and so the process, I would call it an organic, living process. It's a breathing process. There's these moments or periods of in-breath where it's me working, writing, or working with the cinematographer. And then there are these openings where we'll have table reads where I'll sit with a whole bunch of people, some of them not even involved in the film, and talk about what's the cinematography, let's talk about character development. And I'm also going to watch a ton of films that are germane, but then at a certain point I'm going to stop watching them. So, because then when I get closer to production, I'll stop watching film. But during this period, I'm watching film all the time and studying it. So the best way to describe this process is it's very communal, although I am the final decider. It's very organic. It's like breathing. It's like living. And I genuinely believe that I'm constantly discovering rather than controlling what's happening. I'm discovering almost this platonic entity that exists already outside of time, which is this work of art. I'm finding it with people, and I can't find it by myself. It's just I happen to be the center of the funnel through which this piece is being born, but I can't do them. I'm just the center of it. It's like a gravitational field, and then there are major players close, like a solar system, and then comets that fly in and out to help a little here and there.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this process can take some time then.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize for touching the mic there. It does, it can, and it will. There are a lot of people in the community elsewhere who talk about how fast they are and how quickly they make their things. Miyamoto Musashi, the great Japanese warrior and philosopher, said, the essence of martial arts has nothing to do with speed. Certainly we adjust our pace, but to emphasize speed is to be in a hurry, and this is wrong. So yes, In Winter took an incredibly long time for political and financial reasons. This one will certainly move more quickly and efficiently, but it's slow. It has to have time to grow and find itself. And that's with actors, with writers, with people who are doing lighting. It's like a living thing. It's growing. So it's slow.
And you've been through a few drafts of The Hunter, correct?
I'm working on the third draft right now.
Okay.
I'm in the third draft right now of the screenplay. Okay. Yeah.
Do you feel like you're reaching the end of that process?
Never.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, never. In Winter was shot on a hybrid of the sixth and second drafts, and then it was recreated in the editing studio with major changes. We didn't, and although I think that what will end up here might be closer to the script. Literally on a day-to-day basis, it's changing. The script is a guide. We will shoot what's in the script, but we may chop a bunch of stuff right before we hit production, and we may see something and shoot something spontaneously. But yeah, the script is our core guide for sure.
Okay.
But I'll never be sitting there. Oh yeah, here, done. This is it. This is concrete.
So are you the kind? Okay, so you're not the kind of writer that will say, that you were supposed to say the house.
Only. Sorry, good point. That's entirely context sensitive. In general, in my direction, I prefer to be minimally invasive. I prefer to give they say there's this phrase again, sorry, Marshall, in Tai Chi that you want 4 ounces to deflect 1,000 pounds. My goal as a director is to give the minimal nudge to break or open the crystal. In certain cases, the exact language is critical, and in those cases, if the exact language is critical, I'll do 9 takes until we get the exact language. In many other cases, the actor might go off script, and I'll be like, okay, that's the take, boom, give it 3 stars, and we'll do a safety. So it depends on the context and what the language is doing in the film.
Yeah.
Or the bodily action. There are certain times it's absolutely necessary that, unlike Francois Truffaut, he would take a lot of time actually organizing the actor's hands and like everything meticulous. And then other times it's like, hey guys, let's try this out, go for it.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting combination.
Yeah, whichever seems most appropriate.
So who would you say have influenced, what filmmakers have influenced you a lot? It sounds like there's some European.
Yeah, the tops, I would say off the top would be Bergman, Kubrick, mostly for cinematography. Japanese director Ozu, who did Floating Weeds, and Tarkovsky is a huge factor as well. There are many others. Truffaut, Woody Allen's early work is influential to The Hunter, but those are some names that come to mind. Oh, Kurosawa, of course. I don't work in any way in the epic scale or the way Kurosawa unfolds a story. So my films, but the inspiration of Kurosawa's work is unbelievable. Just the quality and the integrity of the work. You know?
Yeah. Now you are living in Duluth now.
I live in Duluth and travel a lot. No, I'm really. This is my home. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're a Duluthian now.
I suppose. I suppose I am. Yeah.
Let's just. We'll just get the apology for the weather out of the way.
If the city wants to call me one, I'll be one. Yeah.
But tell us, you're a native New Yorker,
I grew up in Manhattan.
Okay.
Yeah. I grew up in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. That was where I was born there, and I grew up there in New York City.
Did you do the film school thing?
No. What I am is an art. I'm an artist. But what I mean by that is, I'm trained deeply throughout the world's museums, the world's canon of literature, the world's canon of film and poetry, painting. I've sold painting. I'm trained in art, and I'm working in film. When people say they're filmmakers, I'm like, all right, I'm a filmmaker. I say if I make a third film that gets released, then I might call myself a filmmaker, and I'm working on my second. I believe that essentially I'm a poet working in film at this time. I'm not a career filmmaker.
Okay.
Like people in LA,
Sure.
real career filmmakers. That's how
Okay.
they're. I'm a poet working in film.
Do you aspire to be a career filmmaker?
No, but I've got 2 or 3 or 4 more that are brewing. I know for a fact that if the universe allows me and my people to make a third film, it will be shot in New York City or Venice, California. It's either going to be a piece that I'm developing called The Threshold, the working title, or it's going to be a remake of Thomas Mann's Death in Venice, shot in Venice, California, a contemporary, a great German piece of artwork brought into our day. And I have people in LA that are interested in that. So those are the next 2 possibilities. And then I've got a couple other ones that are plugging along. So I don't aspire to be a career filmmaker, but it would be a great pleasure and honor if the world would continue to allow me to make this work, because it's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
Really rewarding.
Okay, well, I want to veer away from the artistic for a moment and kind of talk about the practical aspects of filmmaking.
Absolutely.
Shooting films here, like you shot in winter and in the area, Cloquet.
Yes, absolutely the area.
How did you find your crew, your DP, all those things?
Well, for crew, it was a little happenstance, but really worked out well. Dale Botten is a colleague of mine. He's a writer and actor in this area. He's won some awards, very talented person. And Dale has been working for a while on trying to get his award-winning script about the Duluth lynchings made into a film. He's had a lot of trouble with that for reasons, some obvious and some not, but it's an award-winning script. And I at one point was attempting to help Dale find some producers for that. And we met a young Afro-Brazilian filmmaker from the Twin Cities who was interested in doing a documentary on the lynchings. This gentleman, whose name is Ben Wellington, who's now in New York, he was finishing up film school at MCTC in the cities. And he looked at the In Winter script, as many people in the area did, and he thought it was impressive. And he organized a meeting for me with the graduating MCTC seniors, who are all very young, very ambitious. And he organized a meeting where I presented my project. And some of the best young students, the most promising, who now have careers in film, they were like, a feature at this level? Yeah, count me in. My director of photography, Joe Colby, who did a magnificent job on In Winter. The photography, people who hate the film, I've heard this, man, I really hated the film, but man, the cinematography is fantastic. I always tell that to Joe. That kid was 20 or 19 or 21 when he shot my film.
Yeah.
So a number of those crew came from there, and some of them were older too, And then what happened was, from that kernel of quality, the word spread in the community. Likewise with the acting, what drove the actors was the script. The script was more challenging, more difficult, and more risk-taking than the scripts that people are seeing around here and in the cities. And serious actors were moved to be involved. And in fact requested specifically some of the sexual edginess and some of the other edginess and depth of it, requested it to advance them as professionals and advance their work.
So it sounds like your actors kind of came from.
The actors came, I mean, we did do like ads and TC Cinematics. We did
Sure.
do Craigslist. We did the whole thing. We talked to some casting people. But one very quick story, I was with Nora, the lead. Nora spent a month up here in November or December prior to shooting, going to the places where the character Annika would be and studying the young women of this area, absorbing it. Nora picked up a little thing. She saw that a lot of the young women here in the snowmobile jackets and the cigarettes have anger in their faces, and she picked up some muscular movements that she saw. And if you watch Annika in the film, you'll see her doing certain things with her jaw. That's something that Nora saw.
Interesting.
But she and I were here working, and we went to Amazing Grace Cafe, and there was a film crew there shooting a short that did end up going to Cannes with the best DP from the cities who recently fell to his death in Brooklyn on a shoot. And John Cromwell, the son of James Cromwell, a phenomenal actor. We walked in, and there they were. John ended up playing the priest in Winter and doing a magnificent job and flew out from LA to do it, or from California. So that was just what? We just walked in. We weren't planning. We had no idea they were in town.
Yeah.
And John became one of the principal actors, and just, his work, again, I apologize about the mic, it moves me, what he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, there's a very, there's sort of a real, there's elements of fate involved in the creation of your films. And part of that maybe because you let
Trust.
it develop.
I trust
Sort of
fate.
trust the process.
There's a lot of that. One thing that happened, there were a lot of strange, I would call them supernatural things that were in support of In Winter. There was fate was behind it in a way. And recently I was scouting a location for The Hunter, and to be very brief, the most important scene in The Hunter is a chess game between two principal characters. And I walked into a specific chamber on this location, and it was a bare room, like an old Soviet interrogation chamber with a bare bulb and one old wooden table and two chairs and a chessboard inlaid in the table. The room, which I had never been in my life, was dressed and ready for my two actors to walk in. And I looked at some colleagues. I said, and I knew in my body I had found, but not only that, this entire location was perfect, but that was a sign from whatever entity you care to ascribe it to. This film will be made, this is ready, we're doing this. There's a room with a chess table. Why is this room here? It had no relation to the context of the building I was in. Why is it there? I don't know.
Interesting.
It was pretty darn cool.
Interesting.
And a lot of weird stuff like that happened. But anyway, there was a storm where every time in the film, previous film where Annika gets up to give the prayer at the rich dinner table, there was a horrific windstorm howling. And every time she stood up to give the prayer, the windstorm would rattle the house and we couldn't shoot. And as soon as she sat down for another take, it would stop. It was like, the gods, the Nordic gods were talking to us.
The Nordic gods.
It just happened. Gods, goddesses,
We're
the
having
Valkyries.
kind of a Nordic gods
Yeah,
day today.
totally. So anyway, that's some of the stuff that happened, and there was a lot more than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So obviously you have a background that encompasses a variety of arts and practice.
Very much so. And I acted also on stage as a kid in New York.
Oh, okay.
So that's a big part of my directing work, is that acting experience.
Okay.
Sorry.
So what drew you then to say, you know what, I want to start putting these images on film, and what took you there?
Yeah, briefly, in Vermont, before I moved here, I'd started to do some digital video work, and we had a TV show on the public access, and in New Hampshire it was pretty good. People liked it, with a friend of mine, John Doyle. And what ended up happening was that for whatever reason, I started to work on shorts. I was asked to direct a documentary. What I began to find was that the medium of film combined things that were really important to me in a fascinating way. They combined what you might call human leadership, working in teams and guiding people to an outcome that I find fulfilling. Business and logistics, just dealing with people to make stuff happen in a very, like insurance and food and all that crap, And also visual and written and human art. And there was an intersection. And then I realized that this was the only art form which combined all of those things. And I was like, wow. I have never done any work even close to as fulfilling as producing and directing my own writing. So I'm like, this is it, This is it. This is the manifestation of the most of me possible in one activity.
Well, yeah, so that makes a really great case for, all the work you've done over the years in various medium, and,
it all leads.
It all had to happen.
It all leads. It all leads to this. You know, reading my mom's poetry books, walking around museums in France. It all, and you can see it in the scripts. There are references to it. All leads to this point. None of it's all the jobs that, you know, working for UPS. It doesn't matter. When you're producing and directing, every bit of human experience, failure or success, is relevant. It's all relevant.
Yeah.
Totally.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I think, you know, when you truly reach where you should be as an artist is because you've had this life experience and this artistic experience, and it all comes together.
Yeah.
It's subconsciously in you.
It's,
you can't.
And spiritually. It's like both. And I apologize for, again, talking about the past project, but the other thing is that these works of art represent a necessary inner process at the point that I am in life. That as I made that one then, I could never make it again. And I got through and dealt with certain, and here I am. This is like looking at the void, and how do we deal with the void? And this is where I am at a 54-year-old man, you know. Pleasure, yeah, I've had some pleasure, and pleasure's great, but it's not, and wisdom, yeah, maybe I had some. And so this is what I'm wrestling with now, the hunter. And anybody who's coming on this team is a person who, in whatever way, shape, or form, doesn't have to be the same as me, but they have to be engaged with those questions. And then they're going to be a contributor.
Well, that brings me to my next question.
Sure.
I was, you know, in the interest of full disclosure, I was at your audition recently.
Yeah.
And I found it, you know, interesting because you give direction in the audition, which is a great thing, and a lot of directors do that, and I like to see that. Mm-hmm. But what was interesting to me was about your direction was, you know, not just with me, but with the other folks that I was watching.
Observed some stuff, yeah.
Yeah, was watching you sort of talk about, you know, little things like, you know, when do you stir your drink? When, you know, what is the drink? Are you hiding in the drink?
Yeah. Yep. Go on. Sorry.
You know. So talk a little bit about when you audition actors and how you find your actors and what you're looking for from those folks.
Sure. I appreciate your bringing that up. I would say that although I love all aspects of this work, the most pleasurable and the thing that I love most is working with actors on set and working with actors. Actors it's like beautiful human sculptures that I'm working with. We're all working. It's amazing. And when you mentioned the issue of the relationship to the drink or what have you, one of the things that I enjoy doing as a director is connecting the actors with their physical environment in a way that allows them to expand. I find that even for really good actors, it's easy to get a little bit preoccupied with lines and performance. You know, a little bit preoccupied, you know, with what they have to do, you know. So I've found that I often will talk to actors about what's behind them and the various props, and I try to bring them into the environment they're in to help them be a full person where they are. What I'm looking for when it comes to the acting, it's ironic we should say looking, because I was talking to Justin Peck, a local director, the other day about closing my eyes occasionally on set or what have you, and feeling. What I'm looking for is what I found is often on In Winter, and what is that feeling in the heart and in the center of the body. It's authentic. You're feeling things. Like when you get a feeling, that's a human experience. But I will say that in terms of actual physicality, there are two issues. One is the body, and look at how you hold your body. How do I hold my body? What do we do with our pink? So one of the things I'm very interested in with this coming film is situating each actor so deeply in their body in terms of, well, you had a hip injury when you were 7, and you know, you're very fond. Like, I want to situate actors in their bodies so that they're not lost they're not in their minds too much. Yeah. And the human face. Real acting is the human face, because the human face is used by lie detectors. The human face is how we, with mirror neurons, assess people in conversation. Watch Charles Hubble and Nora, but particularly Charles in this case, in the close-ups when they just made love and they're in the restaurant and they're having that dialogue. And if you watch Charles's facial responses to Nora's statements, the subtlety of the facial movements and how authentic they are to how a person would act, that's acting. And the face is I say, oh, you know, for my son, the violin is his instrument. actors, sure, it's a body. The face is the actor's instrument, and the more subtle, unless they're doing character work, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I'm learning more and more about that. It's the body and the face. I mean, that's obvious, but hey, it's what it is.
So yeah, and so you're looking to represent a true human experience.
Yeah.
And part of that is physical, but sometimes actors can lose that in the. It can go on the back burner.
Yeah, I mean, the more trained actors, of course, are
Sure.
working in that area. And with the more trained actors, it's a matter of dialing them into the physicality you're looking for. And with newer actors, it's helping them almost get out of fear or get out of almost a woodenness or get out of, like
Right.
you'll often, and get into relax and being fully alive in their performance. And I
Yeah.
don't mind working with new actors if they're appropriate, for the thing. But yeah, it's but while the first film was, we were looking for what I'd call, although it's stylized, we were looking for very naturalistic performances. The Hunter, the piece we're working on now, actually moves between dimensions, and one of its dimensions is what you would call the quotidian, the everyday world. And in that dimension, our shooting style and our acting, it's going to be very naturalistic. But one of the key dimensions is a theatrical, chiaroscuro, almost black and white underworld dimension, and people there are quite stylized. So you might even see mimes. You might see people very actory. They might even be bad acting. That might be part of what's going on down there, if
Wow.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. No, it makes a lot of sense.
So it's like a magical
Yep.
art world, and then a real world that's dull
Sure.
and painful, like our real world is.
Okay, so we're just about wrapping up here. We're just about out of time, but
Sure.
I just want to give it to you for a couple of minutes here.
Sure.
To share anything you'd like to share about, what's upcoming for The Hunter, what your hopes are for that,
Yeah.
what your feelings are about the film community here in Duluth.
Okay, sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank the film community here. There's been a lot of support. There's been a lot of people, crews, cast. There's turnout for auditions. People who came to our sold out screenings at the festival and people at the festival. So it's a very vibrant and very forward-moving film community. There's a lot happening now with ITV as well, and with the upcoming film festival, and so it's growing and it's dynamic. What I'm hoping to do with The Hunter is simply grow in our abilities. I don't think it'll be. I often say that my first film was better, worse, and different than what I expected, and I'm sure it'll be the same with this one. I'm looking to also offer some internships in the community for students and people who don't normally get involved in film work, and to have them on the set and helping. That is something I'm discussing with the school district right now. And if I can help the film community here raise its ambitions and also expand its sense of what's possible and what people can do here, that's great too. And then lastly, of course, we're looking forward to premiering the piece at Duluth Superior Film Festival as our Minnesota premiere. Richard Hansen and Matt Dressel and all the team over there. I think that at the risk of being self-serving, we're funding our project. We have had some pretty generous financial support here in town, and we're going into a second phase. And people, there's an Indiegogo page, and people are coming through. So that's an area where people can be immensely helpful. And also in the community, there are people who are helping in kind with catering from their restaurants at no charge. In order, they don't want to throw down a couple grand, but they'll do a meal for cast and crew for one night, things like that. So
Sure.
There's a lot of help coming in, and like you say, trusting fate. You have to eventually believe, and that's why I set the shooting month for October 2019. It felt like, okay, it will come through. So that's where that is, and
I love an optimistic ending.
I don't even know if I'm optimistic. I just believe. I
Yeah.
suppose I am. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Alex, so
Thanks,
much.
Victoria. It was a pleasure to be with you.
You are the first one of our filmmaker features that
It's
we're
an honor.
doing here at PACT, so hopefully many more. Alexander Gutterman.
Thank you. Thanks, Victoria. Pleasure.
Thank you.